Hello and welcome to a brand new Tide Studios video. I'm Dan.
And this is Jones. DJ Jones.
Yep, and welcome to a brand new video.
Brand new.
We're debating today. We're debating today. Are you going to do that throughout this entire...
Entire.
We're debating Kinder versus the Wedding of River Song.
Ding ding! Okay, so Dan Shipley prefers Wedding of River Song to Kinder. Oh no, that's the other way around.
Yes.
I prefer Wedding of River Song to Kinder. And we're going to debate which one we think is best. It might end a bit inconclusively. Maybe you want to decide, you want your say. Maybe you're like, both those episodes are pants, or you're like, oh, both of those episodes are so golden and shiny that we can't decide because we can barely see the episodes. Okay, but I'll just give a bit of feedback on the episodes, or background information rather, info to go. Alright, here we go. So Kinder is an episode with the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison, and his companions, Nissa, played by Sarah Sutton, Tegan, played by Janet Fielding, Adric, played by Matthew Waterhouse. And the Wedding of River Song is with Matt Smith as the Doctor, River Song played by Alex Kingston, Rory played by Arthur Darvill, and Amy Pond played by Cannon Gillan, or Gillan, or whatever her name is. Okay, so who wants to start? I think I've done a bit of talking, so it's over to... Oh, well, we haven't really said what the plots are about. Kinder, it's very hard to say what it's about, because it's very, very confusing. But it's about this evil force called the Mara, which is actually like an evil thing that's within us, and it tries to escape, and the Doctor prevents it, because the Doctor uses mirrors for it to reflect on itself, and evil can't stand itself, so it regresses. Wedding of River Song is...
Doesn't even have a plot, so let's just brush over that one.
Does. Wedding of River Song, the Doctor is about to be killed, assassinated, because it's like a part of the time event, so he can't avoid it, on a beach, and it's by River Song. But River Song cheats time by draining her gun pack, which causes time to be very mishmashed and disordered, that the Doctor has to die on the beach in the end by them holding hands, and it brings them back to that point, and then the world's normal. But actually it wasn't the Doctor, it was the Doctor and a Tesseract robot, and he goes on, and we find out the reason why they want to kill the Doctor is because they don't want Doctor Who to be answered. So those are the plots that we're debating about. You may have already watched those episodes. If so, you've just refreshed them in your mind. Okay, so Dan Shipley, you go first.
Okay, right. So, The Wedding of River Song, written by Stephen Moffat. Okay, let me just say one thing. I despise this episode with a passion. Why? Because it is so full of plot holes and so worthless that it's just... Oh, goodness. Right, let me just say this.
Yeah. What
is the point of this episode?
The point of this episode... I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Matt Smith era as a whole, really, but I do like this episode because, really, it's about the Silence wanting to kill the Doctor, and it's like showing... that they're trying to use River Song to kill the Doctor, and it's from things that pointed before and things pointing back, so it's quite confusing actually to say what the thing of the episode is, really. But it's about the Silence wanting to kill the Doctor, but the Doctor cheating death.
Okay, I would actually argue that what this episode actually is about is to make River Song even more important to the world of Doctor Who than Moffat likes to think that she already is.
Right.
She was introduced in Silence of the Library with a very interesting backstory. She knew the Doctor, she'd met various Doctors.
Yeah. That
was really interesting. And the end of that episode, if you remember...
How do you prefer this episode, Silence in the Library?
The end of that episode, she sacrifices herself for the 10th Doctor. Yeah. And she has another Doctor, Sonic.
Screwdriver.
Yeah. And she tells him his name. And the 10th Doctor is blubbing and he's crying on the floor, as the 10th Doctor does.
It is an amazing episode.
And he says, I would only tell a person my name for one reason.
Yeah, I think this is a great episode. But the thing is, from that episode, we already kind of guess, or Moffat's point towards the fact that they're probably married and they loved each other. But then that's like, if that was it, that's all we would know about. And River Song would just be that, oh, that's the Doctor's love. So really, he judges up and says, no, actually, River Song's been forced to assassinate the Doctor because that's how she's been brought up by the Silence, and in the end she's going to be enforced to, because they want a Time Lord to kill another Time Lord, since they've seen how deadly the Doctor is. So they kind of. So I see why I did make it more interesting, because if not, it'd be like, oh, River's just the Doctor's love, whereas no, actually, she's like an enforced assassin. It's quite interesting.
Okay, so we're on the beach. The 11th Doctor sees the astronaut coming out of the lake.
Yeah.
The astronaut puts up his space helmet, and it's River Song.
Yeah.
She's crying, she's blubbing, he's blubbing, as the 11th Doctor does. And
what's brilliant about this bit, actually, you're saying a bit, I think you're trying to point out something that's bad, but actually what's really clever is it reverses the dialogue from Science and Library, where the Doctor's saying things that River said, and the River's saying things that the Doctor said. So actually it's pretty great, because it's like a mirror reflection, because the Doctor says, don't change one line of this, because River's wanted to change time and rewrite it, and the Doctor's saying, don't you dare. And in the library, River's saying, don't rewrite this. And so it's really clever, actually, that bit that you're trying to diss.
Yeah, okay. We know that River is going to assassinate the Doctor, or at least the spacesuit is.
Yeah.
We are told, in the script, in dialogue, that the suit is controlling River Song. River Song does not control the spacesuit.
Yeah.
1. Why does anybody need to be in the spacesuit if the spacesuit is self-controlled? 2. If the spacesuit can be self-controlled and she cannot stop it, how can she stop it?
Well, what it says is how she stopped it was that she actually used up the energy pack by shooting, but nothing, so that when it came to the point, she had nothing to fire.
Yeah, but
that changed history though. Cause the Doctor.
Yeah, but she can't do it. She shouldn't be able to fire at anything because the spacesuit controls itself.
I know what you mean, but the spacesuit allows it to fire. Sorry, it's the spacesuit. The one thing that she could do is spacesuit.
Yeah, okay then, but why does she need to be in it?
Okay, actually, I never thought of that, but maybe it just needs something to be in it, hands to hold it.
No, because it's self-controlled. The only reason that Moffat put River Song in the blooming spacesuit, why did he put her in? Just to create a bit of tension. There isn't even tension at all, because she goes, "Oh, sorry, sweetie, spoilers," and then it blacks out, and then we have the alternate reality.
Yeah,
there is literally no other reason. There's no tension. There's nothing. It's a massive plot hole.
I never even thought of it though. So
exactly.
But if I never thought of it, it doesn't really matter. It's not that noticeable. And you could come up with some explanations for it anyway. I can't come off the bat of it apart from saying that. Well, if it was just a suit, it would just like crumple on the floor. Maybe it needs something to fill it. Well, it will, wouldn't it? You can't just have. Like, it can't just be a suit coming out of the water. It'd be like
but it did
ground.
in The Impossible Astronaut.
Well, but it had someone in it.
Did it?
Yeah.
The little girl, the little Melody Pond.
Yeah, she was in it.
Yeah, but it just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you can. Well, yeah, but I know what you mean. But it's because it's about River trying not to kill him. That's the drama. She loves this person, but she's been forced to kill him. Okay. A bit like King Yukanos, who wants to kill Perry, but is enforced by the Time Lords. Which is a dramatic moment because it's like being forced to kill someone you love. So I found it really dramatic, that actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Now let's come. Should we come to Kinder now?
Yeah.
Now Kinder, I think, is a pretty good episode still, but it's so confusing that you don't really know what it's about. I watched this with a friend of mine, and we were both like, "What was that about?" It was like so enjoyable to watch, but it's like so confusing. I think it's far more confusing than Wedding for River Song is, even though it's like timey-wimey. I think Chris Bailey, the writer, threw so much into it, and unfortunately this went through 3 script editors' hands, because there was a changeover from Chris Bidmed to someone else I don't even know the name of because he didn't stay long, and Eric Saywood. So I think it got just a bit lost and confused. Still great, my 99th favourite episode, but it loses a bit, and also Nyssa, one of the companions, they just shoved her in the TARDIS and she didn't even show up into it. And that's the problem really throughout that series, that they had too many companions, that they were like, oh, I can't write dialogue for 3 companions, and plus they're all young, naive people, so they only say the same things really. So they just had her out of it, and then she just shows up at the end scene like, what's been happening, guys?
Yeah.
So
well, the thing is, for me, I'd rather have Nyssa not have good dialogue than River Song just constantly repeating the same bits of dialogue. Hello, sweetie. Spoilers.
River's not well, she's not really even a companion, but she's not one of my favourite. But you already said that you liked her a lot, though. From Science Library.
River Song, yes, in that episode, but the way that Moffat moulds her after that into the 11th Doctor's era is completely destroyed.
It does.
Her first appearance in Time of Angels.
But I think, yeah.
Immediately, with the red lipstick and the gun, and she flies into the TARDIS onto the 11th Doctor, and she makes some quip about, some sexual quip, and it's just like, are we really going down this rabbit hole?
I know, and plus it's like, he does it for children, but he has it very, he does have it, but that's more general problems. It's not like a problem specific to Wedding for the Song, that's just... Sorry, for me that's just like a Moffat era problem rather than...
Right.
Oh, this is...
Okay, so in this particular episode...
Kinder, sorry.
So with Kinder, for me, Kinder makes you think. You said it was confusing, but it makes you think. It makes you think about stuff. And it makes
what's
you
going on?
question stuff. And you can't deny that everybody in that pretty much acts really good.
Yeah.
The fifth, Peter Davison, as always, gives a great performance as Doctor Who.
Yeah.
The companions, even though they might not have great dialogue, all act their socks off. The sets are great, and the story's pretty good as well. It's a story that is very typical of the Fifth Doctor's era.
It's like there's a bit like where it's confusing what Sander wants to do. Like what's his aim motive? Like I think although I quite like mystery, and I do think that's good. But if the character doesn't have a motive, it just becomes very pointless to what they're doing. There needs to be motive, but Sanders is just gone insane, and there's no explanation to why. Another character, I've forgotten what the other character's called, has gone insane and crazy, who's helping them, and they're just making a play world, and it's hard to understand what the themes are. I do quite like the Mara as a villain, because it's... but then I think, a bit like the Weeping Angels, the Mara, I think, got ruined in its subsequent episode, Snake Dance, where it did the opposite. It was very clear what was going on, which was good, but all it was about the Mara returning, the whole episode. And it meant that throughout the whole episode there's no confrontation, no conflict. So this is about another episode, Snake Dance, but Mara lost its venom, really. It lost its, unfortunately, a bit like the Weeping Angels. But Mara here is pretty good villain, but then it's shown to be not so good later on. But because it's like an internal evil that exists, but you can't quite destroy it since it's always within us, which is clever, but it doesn't still quite make sense why it needs to be in certain people's bodies. And there's this bit in part 3 where it shows the end of the world, but doesn't explain how the world would even end. It doesn't really make sense, and there's so many things going on, it's like, what? Yeah. It's fair, I've only watched this episode once. Maybe if I rewatched it, I'd get it. But I think it is still really confusing. But it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland, I think, this episode. It's like, really enjoyable, but not a clue what's going on. It's like, there's a Cheshire Cat there, there's a talking caterpillar. That's what this episode's like, because it's a bit... I think my favourite moment from this episode is the bit where Tegan's like in the world of dreams, whatever it is, and then there's like, and then the Mara's trying to enter her, although somehow the Mara's around her. Anyway, I don't get that bit anyway, but it's still great because she is in like this Alice in Wonderland, people drinking teas and it's just great. I like that bit, but still, it's just still confusing. It doesn't really make sense it doesn't really have like a beginning, middle, and end. It's just what's happening, and so that's why I wouldn't put it higher than Wedding for a Song, which does have some order, although it is timey-wimey as a lot of Moffat episodes are.
For me, the Wedding of River Song commits the worst Doctor Who sin imaginable.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you know what it does? It renders the preceding series useless.
Why is that?
The whole of Series 6 builds on the fact that the Doctor's going to die. Silence will fall. Doesn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's also building to the time the Doctor...
Wedding of River Song completely destroys that.
But it doesn't really, because it's also building up to Trenzalore, and it's building up to the time of the Doctor episode where Silence will fall, and where the Doctor...
Which shows that Moffat doesn't know how to end a series. Or doesn't know how to end this series.
Well, I do... Series 6 isn't a great series, because a lot of the episodes in it aren't good, but I think this is one of the... I actually think it's a great episode, and... Because, I mean, there's a Doctor... I mean, in this episode, you have him, like, adventuring around, like, different places. I mean, this was one of the series with no Dalek, meant to be no Dalek episodes, but it does show, like, a Dalek in it, and But the Doctor goes around. He's like eventually like he has the fedora hat on, and he goes around playing it. Like it just does a great lot of things, like playing chess to beat people. And he's trying to. And in this episode, the Doctor's actually tracking down the trouble and the villains. It's not the Doctor just stumbles upon it, but he's actually going. And it's a narrative. The Doctor's telling this narrative to Winston Churchill of what happened and how times like stuck and frozen, and how he's the epicenter of it, and he needs to kind of change so that time can move on. He needs to. So
you're saying that the whole point of this episode is that the Doctor is facing up to the fact that he must die,
but he's trying to discover it, and he wants to know why he has to go, and it's like the Doctor's trying to deal with his own demise really, and that's why he's going on these desperate things and these ventures. He goes into this the place with the headless monk of the rich or whatever it is, and there's it's kind of quite Indiana Jones in some ways, but it's like. The Doctor, it's a bit like in Remembrance of the Daleks. It's not just the Doctor stumbling upon something or the Time Lord or something else sending him to do something. The Doctor's being proactive about going out and dealing with it. And in the end he finds out he can't deal with it and actually must face it, because if not, the question will be asked when no one can speak falsely, and he'll have to say his name. Well, when we find out he does cheat that as well.
Exactly. So again, that's just proving my point that Moffat starts stuff that he doesn't know how to finish.
Yeah, but the thing is, if the Doctor did say his name, that would kind of end the show, really.
Well, so, yeah. But
it's the fact that the Doctor has to go up against something, but he overcomes it. That's what Moffat does.
And he overdoes it by cheating.
Cheating...
Using the Tesselector.
Yeah, but it's quite clever.
Which renders all the emotion in this episode, if any, all the crying on the tower, all the blubbery stuff from Amy and Rory, renders it all useless.
Well, for me, the reason why this isn't like a grand episode, or I haven't put it any higher. I've put it 69th of my favourites. But that's not important. But it's because this episode is pretty much like the last finale. Because in the last finale, Pandora Copen / Big Bang, it's about the fact that the universe will end if the Doctor doesn't die, and now it's like the same thing. It's like if the Doctor doesn't die, the universe will end. So like Russell, but then it's similar. Like Russell T Davies does the same. It's like pretty much all his finales are about armies invading, and now but Moffat's got his own pattern. In Name of the Doctor, he kind of zhuzhes it up a little, but it's still kind of the same, really. But I think it is better than it doesn't have the same plot holes as Pandora Copen / Big Bang is. I think that's got more plot holes in. Like, how does the Doctor get out of the Pandorica? How does he? And that's just like brushes over that. It's like how for him to have got to Rory to give the sonic screwdriver, he must have got out originally. And so how did that happen? But the Wedding River song to me doesn't make those same mistakes. Although the astronaut suit, well, if he didn't have someone in it, would be just flopping around. It'd be like a flopping astronaut suit from the beach. So it had to have someone in, and they wanted a Time Lord because the Time Lord would be more powerful, well, equally powerful as the Doctor. Allegedly, that's what the Silence believes.
So the reason that they put that particular person, a Time Lord, into the suit, they put one of the most powerful beings in a suit that can be overrun by a powerful being.
By the astronaut suit. I do admit the astronaut suit's a bit like you can't if you look at it too closely. It's like what, but it does kind of make sense on the surface.
Now let's just talk about the ending of this episode on the tower. That is probably the best scene in this episode.
That is really
where they're actually getting married. The dialogue, the acting. I can't fault Matt Smith and Alex Kingston on that. They are fantastic.
And also to say, even though they're like very different ages, like he's in his 20s, she's in his 40s, but they make that kiss like they're the same age. Or
and that's something that Matt Smith does. When he was cast, Stephen Moffat said he's a young guy, but he's got almost old eyes. And that's what works about that episode. It's that you can tell behind those eyes is a 1,000-year-old Time Lord. And like you say about that kiss, it's about two people who love each other. But the problem is that the rest of the episode is built on this thing that the Doctor's going to die, and now he's gonna tell one person his name.
So you're saying that's why?
And that's another plot hole. That's another plot. I've literally just thought of that. If he's only going to tell one person his name. Because he says that in Silence at the Library, doesn't he? I don't think it's actually that episode, it's part 2, Forest of the Dead. Yeah. He says to River Song, I would only ever tell one person that name for one specific reason. Yeah. So that's what Moffat does in this episode, Wedding of River Song, because he loves her.
Yeah.
But then Clara also knows his name.
Yeah.
And he tells... And even, Madame Vastra knows his name.
Does she? When did she say that?
She in Name of the Doctor, where they all meet round the table.
Really?
And do you not remember
No.
when she says to Clara, or they're talking about something or other, and his name comes up, and she asks him, "What's his name?"
Yeah.
So she even knows,
Yeah.
and then the blooming Great Intelligence even know that his name will open up the tomb of the Doctor.
Oh,
So Moffat's undone his own flipping creation.
I know, but I think that's other episodes. You're not talking about and that's just overall Moffat's fault. But I mean, I'm saying there's no perfect writer. I mean, he's actually my favourite out of the Doctor writers. But Robert Holmes had his faults, and he was a really good writer, and so was Russell T Davies and David Whittaker, Eric Saward.
I'm just saying
even
that
Paul Cornell, blessed Paul Cornell. I don't know what they are, but he will.
Yeah,
faults.
but the problem is with this episode, The Wedding of River Song, is that it's built on so much stuff, and the stuff just falls apart almost immediately. Because the moment that beautiful scene is cut off, when the Doctor says, "Look into my eyes," so he doesn't even tell River his name, does he?
No, but it might have at a different point though.
He said,
Because
really?
But that's an alternative reality. So if he got married then, that marriage never happened. So he must have got married another time.
So the rest of the blooming series is completely devoid of any meaning.
But that's the thing. He must have got married to another time. Because I do talk. Because then DeLorean says, "Oh, you're married now." So he must have got married in the actual, and they meet up. River Song and the Doctor. So they must have got married in this universe.
Well, she's actually going to meet the 8th Doctor in Big Finish.
All right, but do you know what I mean? It must have told her name at another point, and they must have got married in this.
Okay, that isn't a plot hole, because everybody knows a plot hole is something that may not be is completely devoid of any possible reconciliation. Whereas it's not something that
has quite a lot more, I think, than Wedding of River Song. So it's pitting an episode which I think has a lot more, because things that just. It's not that they're quite plot holes, but it's never really connected. So
right.
That's the problem.
So stuff doesn't quite connect. Is your problem with Kinder?
Kinder, yeah, and that's how I find it's like, where was that meant to go? I mean, still a good episode, but not one of my favourites because of that, really. And this isn't one of my favourites, like a grand episode, but I still think it's great. But it does have its problems, but that's because of the overall Moffat's other episodes which are lacking means that this episode suffers from what Moffat does elsewhere. But here, Moffat does some pretty good stuff, I think, like that scene and many other stuff, like, them fighting the silence and when they epically enter in. There's just many great cinematic moments this episode. I'm really well directed. I don't know who the director is, but they did a really good episode. Like when the silence come in, but Rory's trying to resist the eye patch, and then Amy heroically saves them, and then the comic dialogue when they realise they've been married in another universe, and it's like how it's said as well. So so I think a good episode, really, and some typical Moffat stuff is done, like the Silence aren't imprisoned here; they're actually just waiting. I mean but that's not just a Moffat thing; that's a Doctor Who thing. Yeah, typical, but you wouldn't quite expect it. But knowing Moffat, that's pretty much going to happen. But also in this episode, you got the haunting music of the song of the TikTok, and that's kind of, I guess, another thing a bit like inspired from Remembrance of the Daleks when there's the girl singing 5, 6, 7, 8. There's a Doctor at the gate. So it does take those things and it does use them. But so not one of the best, but I still think up there in a way. Although I can see why it's down there, but I think there are episodes that are worse than this, I think. And Kinder, I think, is not as good as this, I have to be honest. But I can see why, because Peter Davison is a very good Doctor.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening, guys. We hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you again very soon. Please comment below with what you think is the worst episode. Kinder, featuring Peter Davison, or The Wedding of River Song, featuring Matt Smith, and we will see you next time.
And others. Okay, see you all!
Bye-bye.
This is Joe.